Society has become addicted to perfection in the new Netflix movie, Uglies. Now, I haven't read the book, but the movie is definitely an intriguing take on how far people are willing to go in order to fit in, especially in a world where everyone is forced to look the same. I went into Uglies expecting another teen dystopian flick, but the premise of the story actually had me really intrigued. I mean, it really does make you think about everyday society issues that we currently all face in our real world. When it comes to people's appearances and how they feel, it's really wild how such a futuristic movie can have such a direct correlation to our current real world situations. Has Netflix brought something new to the table when we think about movies that are set in a dystopian future? Uglies takes us into a world where everyone undergoes a mandatory cosmetic surgery at the age of 16 to become a pretty. It's a society that's obsessed with beauty and conformity, promising happiness at the cost of individuality. We follow Tally, who's eagerly awaiting her turn to become a pretty. But just before her operation, she discovers a group of rebels who choose to live as uglies. This new perspective shakes her beliefs, and she's torn between following society's rules or joining the rebellion. The main conflict centers around Tally's struggle with the pressure to conform versus the desire for freedom. As she learns more about the dark secrets behind the pretty transformation, Tally faces tough choices about everything she thought she knew about beauty and identity. The story takes Tally on a wild ride where she has to make some life-changing choices. In the end, she faces the harsh reality of what it truly means to be a pretty and the price of conformity. It's not just about changing how you look, it's about changing who you are. The resolution feels both thrilling and unsettling, as Tally takes a stand that leaves us questioning our own world. It wraps up with a cliffhanger at the end that sets up the possibility for more, leaving you eager to see what happens next. We're getting roughly an hour and 40 minutes in length for this movie, so it's hitting the average duration mark, but I definitely think that the movie could have been made longer so that they could have added more depth. The most gripping scene from this movie has to be the face-off between the pretties and the uglies. The pretties have been tracking down the uglies for years, and in this sequence, they have finally been able to come face to face. Imagine a super intense face-off where suspense is at an all-time high in this movie, not knowing what the characters' next actions are going to be that will unveil who they really are. The movie sets up to portray the uglies as evil, but as the story begins to build, you're seeing things from the uglies side of things, portraying the pretties to actually be the evil. We get brought into a deeper level of clarity just before the confrontation kicks off, which sees Tally make a decision. But as the confrontation sequence concludes, we're provided with the completed clarity on who is for good and who is for evil. Now, I thought this was a brilliant sequence because this is where the stakes are raised, with suspense, intensity, action and character development being taken to another level, coupled with that feeling of everyone's cards have finally been put on the table. One plot hole that stood out to me and that I noticed in this movie was how quickly Tally shifts her perspective on becoming a pretty. The movie sets up her excitement for the transformation to become a pretty, but her change of heart feels rushed once she comes to learn more about the rebels. The movie could have used more time to develop and build her internal struggle, making her decision feel a lot more impactful. And this is exactly why I think that the movie should have just been made longer. Now, I know I just mentioned one plot gap, but I think there's a bigger picture here. I think the majority of the plot gaps in this movie are all revolving around, mainly for me, the characters' depth in their development. And that did have an overarching impact on the enjoyment of the movie, because if we take this example with Tally, her decisions just seem less convincing because they come across as rushed. If we were able to go deeper into her exploration as a character, that might have just made the story a little bit more compelling and allow us to make more of an emotional connection in with the characters. Now, the movie stars Joey King as Tally Youngblood, Chase Stokes as Paris, Brianne Ju as Shay, Keith Powers as David, and Laverne Cox as Dr. Cable. Now, who are the ones to watch in Uglies? The ones to watch for me are Tally, Paris, Shay, and Dr. Cable. Now, who is the one to watch out of the ones to watch? For me, I thought because of the fast pacing having an impact on the movie, this is where things were made a little bit more tricky for me. But the one to watch for me is Tally Youngblood. Now, besides the pacing, I thought the story arc actually did a decent job when it comes to Tally's character journey, making it somewhat compelling and also one that stands out. She's at the center of this dystopian world, where beauty is mandatory and individuality is a threat. One key moment for Tally happens when she's on the brink of becoming a pretty. She's torn between conforming to society's standards and staying true to her growing awareness of the system's flaws. It's a pivotal scene where her internal conflict starts to really show. Tally's main challenge is grappling with the pressure to undergo surgery and become a pretty, while at the same time she starts to uncover the dark secrets behind the procedure. She faces a moral dilemma, whether to embrace the superficial perfection society demands or to fight against it and face the consequences. Tally decides to rebel against the system, taking significant risks to uncover and expose the truth about the pretty transformation. Her journey through this rebellion is both thrilling and eye-opening, showing her growth from someone who initially accepts the status quo to a determined activist. Our connection with Tally in this movie is tested in a very good way. In the beginning, we see her as a young teenager, and then by the end of the movie, she's the face of the resistance. Her struggle and decision to stand up against a society that values beauty over individuality is a powerful message that can resonate with anyone that's ever felt the pressure to fit in. It doesn't just give that compelling component to this movie, but it also gives more of an inspirational one. Now let's dive into Paris's journey in Uglies. His main challenge is all to do with the pressures of conforming to society's standards. Paris has already undergone the procedure to become a pretty, and now he's living this idealized life that's being promoted by the system. But the real struggle for him at the center of all of this is that it's creating a bigger and bigger rift between him and his best friend, Tally. He's caught between this new superficial world and the loyalty that he feels towards Tally, who's an ugly. Paris's story ends on a bittersweet note. While he doesn't fully break away from the pretty lifestyle, he does show glimpses of his inner conflict and the remnants of his old self. In the end, he doesn't join Tally's rebellion outright, but there's this sense that he's not completely lost to the system either. He represents those who are caught in the middle, wanting to fit in, but also feeling the pull of something more authentic. Paris's journey left me feeling a mix of frustration and sympathy. On one hand, you wish he'd take a stronger stand, like Tally does, but on the other hand, you understand the immense pressure he's under. His struggle is so relatable, because it mirrors the real-life tension between wanting to belong and staying true to who you are. It makes his character feel very human, showing that not everyone can be the hero, and that's okay. Now let's get into Shay's story. Her main challenge is her resistance towards the whole idea of becoming a pretty. Shay is actually the one who opens Tally's eyes up to the possibility of living life outside of the system. But this stance by Shay puts her at odds with a society that's all to do with conformity. Shay's challenge is not just about escaping the surgery, but it's also about convincing others that there's more to life than looking perfect. It's a constant struggle for her to hold on to her beliefs, while everyone around her is either giving in or pressuring her to change. Shay's story takes a pretty intense turn. While she initially escapes the city and fights against the system, things don't go as planned. She ends up being captured and forcibly turned pretty, which is just heartbreaking. But even as a pretty, there are moments where you can see glimpses of the old Shay, suggesting that the system hasn't entirely erased who she is. By the end, she's a tragic reminder of what the society is capable of doing to those who resist it. Shay's journey left me feeling a lot of things, mainly a sense of loss and frustration. She was this fierce, independent spirit who refused to conform, and seeing her get taken down by the very thing she fought against is tough. It makes you think about the cost of resistance in a world that demands conformity. Her story adds depth to the movie, showing that even the strongest among us can be broken by a system that's determined to maintain control. Now let's talk about Dr. Cable. As head of special circumstances, her main challenge is about controlling a society built on strict rules and conformity. She's all about ensuring that everyone becomes a pretty and follows the system without question. Her main challenge is all to do with managing the rebellion, and people like Tally and Shay, who are questioning and resisting the status quo. For Dr. Cable, it's not just about maintaining law and order. It's about preserving the idea that becoming a pretty is the only way to have a perfect society. By the end of the movie, Dr. Cable's story comes to a head when her methods and the truth about the pretty surgeries are exposed. Though she tries to suppress the rebellion and keep her control, the cracks in her system start to show. While she doesn't completely lose her power, the revelation of what she's been hiding undermines her authority and leaves her in a position far less stable than the one before. It's like the beginning of the end of her reign over this controlled society. Dr. Cable's journey left me feeling a mix of anger and intrigue. On one hand, she's this cold, calculating antagonist who embodies everything wrong with society in Uglies, but on the other hand, her character also makes you think about the lengths people will go to maintain control and order. She's not just a villain for the sake of being evil, she genuinely believes in the system she's enforcing. It's a reminder of how dangerous it can be when someone in power thinks they're doing the right thing, even when it's clearly wrong. When it comes to the visuals, one of the most standout moments for me in this movie has to be the big reveal of the pretty city. It's really striking, almost dreamlike, and it really sets the tone for what this movie's world is actually about. There's this moment when Tally first looks out over the city, and you see these glistening skyscrapers, perfect symmetry, and a kind of surreal glow that makes everything look almost too perfect to be real. The city is bathed in this soft, almost sterile light that makes it look like a utopia straight out of a fairy tale. It's a visually memorable moment because it contrasts so sharply with the grittier, more natural world Tally comes from. The visuals add to the tension by creating this constant sense of unease. The pretty city is visually stunning, but there's an artificial quality to it, like it's masking something darker underneath. The flawless exteriors and almost mechanical perfection of everything make you feel like you're looking at an illusion. It adds to the emotional weight because you can tell that beneath all of the beauty, there's definitely something wrong. As the story unfolds, and the darker aspects of the society are revealed, the visuals start to shift. You begin to see the cracks in the perfection, both literally and figuratively. In key moments, like when Tally uncovers the truth about the surgeries, the cinematography uses shadows and less polished visuals to show the decay, and also the price of this so-called perfection. It's like the visuals evolve with the story, peeling back the layers to show the reality underneath. The visuals in Uglies turn the world into a character of its own, drawing you in with its perfection of society and gradually revealing its flaws. The cinematography doesn't just show you the world, it makes you feel the tension and the emotional conflict, making for a pretty good viewing experience. When it comes to the entertainment value, Uglies does have a good dystopian storyline that stands out when you think about The Hunger Games, Divergent. It has high-stakes drama and world building, but focuses on society's obsession with beauty. It's less action-packed, but it still remains engaging with its deep dive into psychological themes. The biggest challenge with Uglies is all to do with its pacing. The story slows down in the middle, and while the setup was intriguing and the climax is strong, some parts feel a bit sluggish. Overall, Uglies made me feel both thoughtful and frustrated. It tackles big issues and has some real powerful moments, but it could use more energy and action in order to balance out those heavier themes. While it offers a fresh take on dystopian films, it might feel a bit slow, and then when it comes to the cut-offs, when the story's almost crying out to add depth to the characters, it's then sort of shifted and taken away. Still, it's a movie that lingers, and that's definitely worth something. And I do think, especially with the fact that they're creating more of these movies, that depth that's missing will get. Overall, I found Uglies to be entertaining, but also lacking in certain areas. I thought the plot and storyline had an interesting premise to it, really making you think about our own world. I thought the character development was okay, but I really do think that the movie should have been longer to allow for more depth to be built in, and that was clearly missing. I thought the visual and cinematography played a really good role in capturing the dystopian world and really bringing it to life for us. And when it comes to the entertainment value, Uglies was an intriguing story, but I just feel like more was needed. They've set themselves up well for more movies, so I'm hoping that the depth that was missing in this movie is made up for in future movies to come. I give Uglies a 3 out of 5 buckets, meaning it's a binge-watching 50-50. So here's the big question. If you had the chance to change everything about your appearance in order to fit into society's idea of perfection, would you do it, even if it meant losing who you really are? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, don't forget to smash a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and follow us on all social media to stay up to date with the latest content. If you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more. I'm Matthew, this is Binge Watcher, thanks for binging with me.